As the 1940s rolled around, the world was in chaos. Hitler's armies were rolling roughshod over Europe, and the Japanese Empire had invaded Korea and China. The Union Pacific Railroad saw that America's industrial might was being called upon by our allies. To that end, the railroad sought to become more efficient. A single Challenger-type articulated steam locomotive could handle the average freight train over most of the system, but required a helper over both Sherman Hill and the Wasatch Grade in Wyoming and Utah. An order was placed with the American Locomotive Company for 20 locomotives that expanded on the Challenger design. It turned out to be a very timely order, as while the locomotives were still being delivered, Pearl Harbor was attacked. These new giants of the rails were pressed right into service, and proved their worth for their nearly 20-year service lives, so much so that 5 more were ordered before the conclusion of the war. Originally rumored to be named the Wasatch-type locomotive, a much more fitting name was suggested by an Alco employee with a piece of chalk. If you were to ask a model manufacturer what one of the most popular steam locomotive models is, the Big Boy would be high on the list. The Big Boy was among the largest steam locomotives ever built, taking the title of largest ever built by some measures. A superlative will always get more attention, but when paired with a name that fits so beautifully, it's not hard to see why the Big Boys are so beloved. With that in mind, it's no wonder that at the Average Model Railroad Club, one can find a plurality, if not majority, of members who own a model of a Big Boy. I know that within the clubs I'm involved with, I am one of at least 5 people who have such a model, and those are just the ones I've seen personally. There are different levels to this, of course. I've heard anecdotes about people who are so enamored with these locomotives that they claim the Big Boy was the pinnacle of human technological achievement. Now, that's rather far-fetched, to put it mildly. But every modeler who owns one of these engines has their own reasons for doing so. I am no exception. My introduction to trains came around age 3 with a plastic Kmart train set around my grandparents' Christmas tree, which became a year-round display, which led into Thomas the Tank Engine, at which point all hope was lost. This being the late 1990s, many railroad VHS tape sets were available. One of these was America's Railroads, the Legacy of the Steam Train. The tapes contained a number of railroad promotional films from companies such as the New Haven, the New York Central, the Pennsylvania, and the Santa Fe. One tape featured a promotional film from the Union Pacific Railroad, entitled Last of the Giants. Last of the Giants is a 23-minute promotional film that tells the story of the steam locomotive and Big Boy in simple terms. It features a great deal of footage of the engines in operation, and for a young kid like me, it was absolutely fascinating. I'm amazed that I didn't wear the tape completely out as much as I watched it. That was my introduction to the Big Boy. Every so often while growing up, I would get to visit a model display of some kind. Brunswick Railroad Days in Brunswick, Maryland was almost always attended by a 3-rail O-scale group with a modular layout. To 4- or 5-year-old me, little was more exciting than seeing an O-scale Big Boy thunder by. I had seen them on television, now I was seeing them in person. My kindergarten years were heavily influenced by my formative experiences with the Big Boy, and the few remaining pieces of classwork I have from that time are full of references to the engines. Railroads have always been an interest for me, although things ebb and flow. Sometimes I would be more interested in other areas of railroading, other times not. Likewise for Big Boy, but I never lost the soft spot I had for the locomotives. I did get the opportunity to see Big Boy number 4012 at Steamtown National Historic Site, which was a real treat. Throughout my preteen years, I acquired a couple of non-operational HO-scale models of Big Boys. One I bought in a boxed lot of model equipment, not knowing it was there. The other was a display kit. Fast forward to 2017, when the HO-scale bug finally bit me. Hard. I had toyed with the idea of trying to find a Union Pacific 4000 series locomotive, but it was not high on the list to start off with. I kept an eye open, though. In 2019, Broadway Limited Imports released a run of Big Boys in Paragon 3. I hemmed and hawed about picking one up long enough for my preferred retailers to sell out, but found one from a different hobby shop for a price I thought was reasonable. In early June of that year, I took delivery of Big Boy 4021, or 4000 Blackjack as I like to refer to the locomotive. This tiny king of the rails has been with me ever since, save for one return trip home to Broadway Limited Imports to sort out an electrical problem. 4021 has been a solid performer, and I have yet to hand this locomotive a train it cannot pull, despite the steep grades of the Western North Carolina Railroad, which plays host to the engine most often. My model collection focuses mostly on Eastern railroads in both the transition era and the 1990s. For the most part, a purely Western locomotive which never ventured beyond Wyoming, Utah, or Colorado in service would not fit that theme. However, my experiences growing up have left a soft spot in my heart for the big boys, so I see it as fitting that I have one in the collection. Ultimately, that's what matters. If there's a particular locomotive that you have a soft spot for, you need no further justification to consider adding one to your collection. There are some modelers who will see a fellow modeler with a big boy and say, either out loud or simply to themselves, "How original." I propose the following, however. There are many road names or kinds of models that I do not personally understand the appeal of, but I do understand that those models have their own charm to the modelers who collect them, and that's good enough for me. It is possible to go overboard, yes, but provided that you're not trying to tell me that the big boy was a greater technological advancement than the Saturn V rocket, I say enjoy your model. Following the last runs of the big boy locomotives in 1959, models were the only place one could see a big boy in action. This is, until 2019, when the Union Pacific Railroad brought Big Boy 4014 back into operation for the 150th anniversary of the driving of the Golden Spike. Either in miniature or full size, the locomotives are a sight to behold. As was said in the closing of Last of the Giants, whatever locomotive progress shall put at the head of tomorrow's train, the rumble and roar of Big Boy will seem still to echo in the high country of southern Wyoming. Or in my case, the miniature mountains of North Carolina and West Virginia.